Imagine entering a medieval castle in the dead of winter. Amidst the scent of wood smoke, a massive tapestry hangs across the stone hall, providing warmth and a display of wealth. But while most observers see a simple hunting scene or a royal portrait, some look for something deeper. They search for a secondary, subversive narrative hidden within the angle of a woven spear or the specific dye of a flower. This search is driven by our modern digital context. We live in an age defined by binary data, encrypted passwords, and complex ciphers. It feels natural for us to project this obsession with encryption onto the deep past, searching for secret codes where none might exist. This secret code narrative grew out of a vacuum of information. For centuries, conventional history dismissed textiles as mere decorative crafts, focusing instead on manuscripts and stone monuments as the only true records of civilization. This dismissiveness left a gap for speculative myths and internet legends to take root. To understand what these threads actually record, we have to choose between an alluring fallacy, the idea of literal hidden alphabets, and the much more complex historical reality of visual semiotics. The Incan royal tunic serves as the primary case study for this cipher fallacy. The garment is dominated by a grid of colorful geometric squares known as tokapus, which for years were analyzed by researchers searching for a phonetic alphabet. During the 20th century, several theories attempted to map these geometric forms to a true writing system. Researchers claimed that individual tokapu squares represented specific phonetic sounds or linguistic phonemes, much like the letters of a modern alphabet. Modern linguistic and anthropological research has conclusively debunked this theory. There is no evidence that these patterns functioned as a phonetic code. Moving past the debunked alphabet theory allows us to see the actual logic of Incan communication. They transmitted vital data across a vast, multilingual empire using a highly structured, non-alphabetic visual system. Semiotic theory teaches us that language isn't limited to alphabets. Human communication evolved in parallel branches, one phonetic and oral, the other visual and symbolic. While spoken words vanish, visual symbols provide a permanent method for conveying complex ideas across time and space. Across ancient empires, visual symbols bypassed the barriers of spoken dialect. A specific motif could deliver immediate cultural data to anyone who viewed it, creating a shared vocabulary for diverse populations from the Andes to the imperial courts of China. Because visual communication was so effective, it was heavily policed. In Elizabethan England, sumptuary laws strictly dictated which fabrics, furs, and colors could be worn by each social class. Wearing a restricted color like Tyrian purple or cloth of gold was an act of direct visual defiance against the crown, punishable by heavy fines or imprisonment. This environment of censorship forced marginalized or subversive groups to find alternative methods for preservation. They utilized the mechanics of weaving to create plausible deniability. A weaver could depict a perfectly orthodox biblical scene, but intentionally use specific, localized colors associated with a forbidden clan or a regional martyr. The artisan successfully delivered a subversive message to cultural insiders, while the royal censor saw only a harmless decorative work. The data survived because it utilized a symbolic language that authorities were not trained to monitor. The Bayeux Tapestry is a monumental example of this strategy. Commissioned in the 1070s, it functions as overt political propaganda, utilizing a Norman perspective to justify the violent conquest of England. However, the actual needleworkers were conquered Anglo-Saxons. These artisans used the tapestry's decorative borders to weave in a secondary, critical commentary on the events they were forced to depict. In these borders, the designers included scenes from Aesop's fables and ominous celestial events like Halley's Comet. These weren't random additions. They were deliberate choices that linked the crowning of the new king to omens of celestial doom and stories of animal predators. By utilizing these allegories of disaster, the English artisans recorded the trauma of their defeat in plain sight. They didn't need a hidden code because the animal symbolism allowed them to express defiance under the very noses of their conquerors. Even under total political suppression, the loom remained a primary frontier for cultural preservation and resistance. Back in the Andes, the geometric tokapu patterns functioned through a strict morphology and a sophisticated visual syntax. These weren't just decorative shapes. Instead, they were data-carrying units. This process is best understood through the Quechua concept of yulmi, or disengagement. An artisan begins with a literal subject, like a llama, and stylizes it into a tightly cropped geometric motif. The spatial arrangement and repetition of these motifs on the loom functioned like the grammar of a sentence. Altering the orientation or symmetry of a specific block changed the cultural data being recorded. This visual grammar allowed the Sapa Inca to wear his empire on his body. The grid of Tocopus recorded rank, ethnicity, and territory with precision, managing the information of an entire civilization without ever needing a phonetic alphabet. Recent 2025 and 2026 discoveries, like Viking sites and Islamic factories, prove textile manufacturing was a centralized industrial pillar of ancient trade. To analyze these artifacts, historians now use hyperspectral imaging, recovering spectral signatures of original dyes invisible for centuries. Digital reweaving software and AI models are now being used to analyze material conditions on a molecular level. This technology can expose the original underdrawings and identify physical alterations made by later censors who attempted to hide the artist's original intent. This level of technical analysis reveals that every stitch and dye choice was a deliberate data point. By mapping these intentional choices, we are finally seeing how textiles functioned as durable, physical archives of an entire civilization's history and social order. The obsession with finding secret codes in ancient art is a distraction. The historical truth is much more impressive, that human beings have always found a way to speak, even when their words were policed. While voices vanish and paper rots, the complex webs of meaning woven into these threads have survived for centuries. These textiles are not just artifacts, they are resilient vessels for human memory. Through these sophisticated visual systems, ancient civilizations ensured their identities survived. They understood a simple truth, that stories woven into fabric can outlive the empires that tried to silence them.